The holiday travel season is upon us, and soon, in addition to countless pictures of Christmas trees and kids with Santa, will come pictures of voice actors recording in awkward spaces as they build hotel pillow forts and makeshift recording booths in their in-laws' basement or spare closet. And to help us create a little better sound while we are recording from the road is a man who has been helping voice actors get their sound right since 2005. He's considered a top authority in the voiceover recording technology around the globe. Welcome to the show, George the Tech, George Whittam. Great to have you here.
I'm happy to be here. I'm putting my phone on silent because I respect you as the listener.
You'd be surprised how many times that happens, or in the middle of the interview, Siri decides that she wants to chime in and ask a question. Or
Exactly. Are my speakers muted? Yes. Okay, we're good. We're good. That's great. It's nice to see you. And yeah, I'm happy to chat travel recording. I like to call it the black belt of voiceover recording because of the challenges you have to overcome while still sounding like you're at cool, calm, and collected at your home studio.
And with so much focus now, especially on the quality of recordings, it makes a big difference when you get outside of your space, outside of your traditional booth. It really does matter. So, I mean, I've seen voice actors build pillow forts in hotels using ironing boards and blankets, which is one of my personal favorites.
Classic.
I've seen people cram themselves into hotel closets. I've seen them flip over mattresses. I've seen them flip over furniture, like standing up the couch to build a booth. So if we are traveling for the holidays and we are in a hotel, other than the tri booth, which I definitely want to get to later, what would you say are some of the best and easiest and most sound-friendly ways to MacGyver a recording space while we're traveling?
Well, okay, so everybody out there watching and listening, you need to already be now at this point, if you're really seriously going to be considering this, you should already be in a place in your career where you really need to do this.
Yeah.
You should be doing this because if you don't do this, you are materially losing a client. You're not able to fulfill a client need.
Yep.
That's why you do this. I feel like it's the only reason to do this. Take vacations when you can. Don't bring gear when you can, but you have to do this at a certain point.
Yep.
So that being said, that if you're doing this, you already have an established sound at home, right? You have a sound you've established. It's part of your brand.
Yep.
You've got certain equipment, a mic, and a space you record from and again, if you're a pro, you've got clients that are ongoingly working with you and they know your sound, right?
Yep.
This is what's difficult. It'd be easy if you have no established sound. You could just set up a mic anywhere in any random place.
Yep.
Do a reasonably good job of getting rid of the echo and stuff and get a decent recording and be fine.
Yep.
The challenge here is, how do you take the sound that your clients are used to having from you and take that with you, right? That's what's hard. And so so the first thing is you have to know whistle, which my buddy Dan Leonard calls whistle, what it's supposed to sound like. Whistle. You got to know that. You got to know that because you have to know what it is you're trying to achieve.
Yep.
If you don't know what you're listening for and you don't know, if you're not intimately familiar with your sound, it's going to be much harder, right? So that's step one. Know what you're supposed to sound like. Then two, you can look at what is available to you at that location, right? So let's just pick out a random worst case scenario. You're in a hotel at an airport based convention. You might know of a few.
Lined along the runway, airplanes flying past your balcony.
Oh my gosh, right? You're in the
I feel like I know where this is going.
These conventions at the airports, why? I mean, I know why. But
yes.
Why?
Why? Yes.
So you're at an airport, you're in a hotel. So obviously you want to pick a hotel room that's not facing the noise. So absolutely make sure well in advance you've chosen a room that is not facing the noisy side, whether that be an airport, the major highway, just the city street. Be on the quiet side. That may mean you have a crappy view. Tough. You're a voiceover actor.
Yeah, that's right. Record. Sacrifices must be made for the greater good.
Yeah, so get that out of the way. One I'll steal from Harlan Hogan, because he was just on my show, is get those little door hanger tags that say "Do Not Disturb" if they still use them in that hotel. Acquire a couple of them somehow. and put them on the doors of adjacent and the upstairs room. Why? Because when you're recording, you don't want the vacuuming to be happening, and you don't want
Valid.
the
Yes.
housekeeping to be working in the rooms near or above you. So that will hopefully keep them at bay. You got to take them off though. You can't leave them there.
Yeah, that is a good pro tip. Now that's like next level. That's something I had never thought of before.
I got to give Carl Harleman credit for that one.
Yeah.
So that's another one. These are hacks. These are like life hacks.
Yep.
So those are a couple things. So you can eliminate or reduce the noise from the source at this point. If there's a fridge in your room, chances are it's making sound that you may not even realize is in the recording. Unplug the dang thing. So you unplug the fridge. I do like the ironing board on the desk method.
Yep.
Because the trick is you take a big, heavy comforter, duvet, like ask for an extra blanket.
Mm-hmm.
Tell them I have poor circulation, and whatever it is, just get another blanket from housekeeping.
Yep.
And then before you put the table on there, before you put the folding table on the desk, throw the blanket over it. Let it drape over the back. So most of it's over the back. Put the ironing board on there, or you can use the luggage cart, the luggage thing. Then you put that on, and then you flap that big heavy blanket over the whole arrangement, right? So now you've got this. It's covering the table, the wall, and it's over your head. And then sometimes it might be even big enough that it drapes down behind you. Now you've created a dead chamber around you in which you can work. If you can avoid it, don't have anything touching you. I know people in a real pinch have literally sat on the bed with a blanket over their head, right? That is just a nightmare scenario. And it's usually, again, people that absolutely have to get something done. It's a TV network affiliate or something, and they got to get it done at all costs. Don't do that. It's going to be a nightmare for you. So make sure whatever it is that you're doing isn't resting on your head or touching you, because if you move, that's going to make sounds, right?
Rustling sound. Yep.
So now that you've gotten rid of all those reflections, or as many as you can, now it's just a matter of getting the mic in a good position. A lot of these mics, some of these mics that you buy come with cute little tripod stands. They are pretty much all universally useless because the mic is now down really low.
Yep.
It's not where it needs to be. So I wasn't thinking in advance to have my show and tell. And I don't even know if I have one of these anymore, but there's these really cool mic arms that have a clamp on one end.
Okay.
Like an A clamp.
Yep.
And then they have a bendy black snake looking thing.
Yep.
The brand name actually that came up with them that's now been knocked off, but it's called the Stage Ninja Scorpion.
Okay. Yep. I've seen those.
These are fantastic. One, they're very, very light. They're just all plastic, so they travel really well. They're not heavy and bulky. Two, you can clamp them to all kinds of things. So you can clamp it to the leg of the ironing board, to the top of the ironing board, to a lamp post, to the headboard, to the rod in the closet, steering wheel of the car, the headrest to the back of your car.
Yep.
It never ends, right? Unbelievably flexible, useful. They're really good. Now, they can't hold really heavy mics, but I wouldn't be traveling with a really heavy mic anyway.
You're not bringing your U87 on the road?
Yeah, I wouldn't travel with a big, bulky, large diaphragm mic.
Yep.
You're setting yourself up for frustration.
Yep.
The microphone, a good condenser studio mic, Neumann TLM-103, and all of its ilk, even the just because it's here, the Rode NT1 is in that same category. Large diaphragm condenser with extremely high sensitivity. These are going to be much more challenging to work with. You're going to be much happier having more of a shotgun style mic like this one. This is an AT875R. It's a great budget mic, well under 200.
That was going to be one of my questions, because I know for me, I am at a point now where I have a 416, and so I can travel with the 416. And in a perfect world, we would all be able to do that, but we can't, because they are cost prohibitive for some people to have as a travel mic. And so
you may not want to take your primary home studio mic and travel with it. It feels kind of risky.
What was the AT? What was it again? You said?
So this is one made by Audio Technica. It's been around a really long time. It's called the AT875R.
Okay.
Clearly, this was designed as a video mic. It's very lightweight, aluminum. It's designed to be like mounted to a camera. It just happens to sound really good on on voice. It's a really pleasing sounding mic for voiceover. It's major. I'd say its only Achilles heel is its self noise is a little higher. So if you put this right up against a good studio mic, this one will have more hiss. It's going to have
Right.
more hiss. But I'm telling you, in a travel scenario, in a hotel, that little bit of hiss is not going to be really a factor, because
Yep.
other noises in the environment are going to be louder than the hiss of the mic, right?
So are there
So a
any
mic like
other
this is good.
are there any other shotguns like that? Like you said, that one's a couple $100 or something. Anything
Yeah,
else that you
that's
recommend
under
in that?
200.
Yeah.
Rode has several shotgun mics in the affordable price range. I think their NTG4 is their best affordable
Okay.
one in the $300 range, and they have the NTG5, which is really more akin in sound quality to the 416. So if you want a stunt mic that's very similar in quality of sound and about half the price, the NTG5 is the one to go with, right? So there are definitely
Yeah.
tiers from 150 to 500 that you can look at for
And that's
shotgun
probably, I
mics.
mean, that'll depend on where you're at too, right? If you're looking to have a microphone so that you can record some auditions on an extended break or something, that's one thing. If you're, Joe Cipriano and you're on call for promo, that's something very different. And you're having a higher upgraded microphone at that point. But it's nice to know
Yeah.
that there are some in the range there, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a range. Again, this is still, and there's always new mics coming out all the time. There's the
So
Synco D2, which people think that they like, and I never do when I hear it, because it looks a lot like a 416. So if people are like, "Oh, that's a 416 substitute," I'm like, "Well, it is in shape, but it is not in sound. It's a completely different sounding mic. This one
let,
is a little bit more akin
let's talk
to."
about something you touched on it. And since we're talking microphones anyway, let you say you've got your whatever it is, your 103 or your 416, you've got your fancy mic in your studio at home.
Yeah.
But you are getting a different mic that you're going to use when you're traveling because you can't take that mic, don't want to take that mic. Like you said, trying
Yeah.
to record with a
Yeah.
U87 in a hotel room, not going to work.
Right.
Are there things that we can do then to be able to match sound? Because, say you record e-learning, right? I do a lot of e-learning. So if I record e-learning in my studio and then my client says, I need you to do this emergency pickup and I'm traveling and now I'm recording in a completely different space and a completely different microphone. How do we overcome that, or can we?
Yeah. That is definitely where the rubber meets the road. This is the really hard part about travel. It's not just to get a mic set up and get it recording and working and get the noise levels under control and get rid of the echo in the room. Those are all important. But the matching part is the really,
Yep.
really critical and difficult part. So there's things that you can control a little bit. So, for example, and this is kind of just speaking off the cuff here because I hadn't really addressed this idea before, but so this is a scoop or it's BS. You can decide. If you at home, if your booth is literally a booth, you're in a small enclosed space that you
Yep.
record in, closet, whatever.
Yep.
If you go to a hotel room and just sit at a desk and put a few pillows around you, do not expect that to sound remotely like your
Yep.
booth. It is not going to.
Yep.
You have this big, reverberant, echoey space around you, right? It's not going to match, more than likely. It's going to be very different. So if you do work in a very small, enclosed, dead space like a ISO booth, you have to try to simulate that. And I think maybe that's why the going to the lengths of creating this like dead space all the way around you with
Right.
the blankets and stuff is going to be important. Vice versa, if your recording environment home is more of a lively space because you don't use a booth, you record in a bigger open space. So your sound has a little bit more liveliness, kind of like I'm just in an office space in my room. So it's got a little bit more reflection. It's a little
Sure.
bit more live. If I conversely go into my cocoon in my room and it sounds super dead and muffled, again, that's not going to
It's
match
not going to sync
either.
up. Yeah.
So that might be something else you might give some thought to if you're really trying to match something. I would not try to do something. The worst idea ever is to pick up a project midway through, like an audiobook or maybe
Yeah.
e-learning, and try to just pick it up as you travel and then come back home. I definitely don't recommend doing that. It's such a difficult thing to get those things to match.
Yeah. That
It,
does sound like a nightmare scenario.
yeah, it's so difficult to get that to match. I wouldn't do that. But, thinking about the space that you record in versus what you do on the road is
Yep.
probably one of the things that's going to help. Another thing is what I call tone matching. I actually offer this as a service because this is definitely one of the more difficult things that I do as an engineer, which is somebody sends me a sample from home. I'll usually say, send me a sample dry and then one with your processing, whatever it is that you process. If you do
Okay.
that,
Yep.
send me both. And then send me a sample from the portable or the travel kit or the booth that you have or the tri booth or whatever it is. Send me that sample. Now you're going to have to plan in advance. Let me know you're going to do this when you're traveling. Then I can get back to you in a timely fashion. And
Right.
then I will make an EQ adjustment, usually just EQ, that will try to match tonally the way those two mics and spaces actually sound. Because they will have different resonant frequencies. One will have more mid-range or a nasal sound or a
Right.
boxy sound, or I'll have all these other weird things going on. And I will try to accommodate with a setting and a preset. Whatever DAW, every single DAW recording software has EQ, every
Okay.
one of them. So I'll always have access to some kind of EQ to tune. And it's if the sounds are different when they have different weird peaky frequencies, it's so much harder to get them to match.
Right.
The better the booth sound is at home, the easier it's going to be because it will be easier for me to match it. The worst case is when I get this is my home studio and it's like
Yeah.
not great, and I'm like, okay, well, that's their sound. How am I going to match that? And then I have to match that with their road setup. Sometimes the road setup sounds better than the home studio.
I
And
can
I'm
see
like, now
that.
what are we going to, this
Yeah.
happens more often than you would imagine with like the tri booth, because that thing works so well
Yep.
that it sometimes their tri booth sounds better than their whisper room, for example. So then you're like, now what do I do? So yeah, it's
Now.
an interesting process, but matching the tone is a challenge for sure.
So what about things like, and I know this isn't going to match the sound specifically, but you've got like noise reduction on Adobe Audition that allows you to, record a room tone or whatever you want to call it.
The noise point. Yeah.
Or RX10, I think it is, has this new AI repair assist thing, right? Where you play a sample of the audio. Can you use things like that to try to correct certain issues?
Yeah, those will correct for things that those will correct for things that those softwares have control over, which is room tone or noise level. Those tools also have tools for correcting mouth noise, removing mouth clicks, things like that. What I haven't seen yet, and I'm not going to say it's not going to come because I guarantee it's going to come, is they don't have that additional ability yet to take a source file and automate the matching EQ.
Right.
I guarantee this is coming because there are EQs already in existence that can help with this task. They will analyze, listen to a source, and create an EQ model to try to match the source. These things do exist. They're just not they're not going to be included with any of the DAWs that I know of yet. So I always try to do it manually. But this is probably, I would, if it's not Isotope RX11, maybe it's going to be 12, but eventually they're going to have that. So you'll be able to do that more easily. But for now, Repair Assist is really just about literally repairing, trying to get rid of noise, trying to get rid of mouth noise, things that it can do within its control.
Yep.
And those tools are fine, but I find it almost always they overcook it.
Yeah.
So you're going to have to detune it a bit. So whatever it thinks that you should do, use your ears and back it off a bit, because I think Isotope's getting better at that, but there seems to be this need to they want to make sure that the person using it hears a difference so they know why they bought the thing.
And then they take it too far. Yeah.
Like, if I can't hear the difference, why do I even bother? Well, you may not hear the difference, but the client or the engineer might hear the difference. So yeah, that's a thing. But yeah, I would say Isotope's a good tool to have at your arsenal or in your toolbox to deal with noise issues that are on that, on the location. It's still going to come down to you knowing your sound from home and knowing to listen for it. You should easily be able to have access to your own file from home that you recorded and reference that file.
Right.
If it's a ongoing corporate client or something, you should be able to just jump into that Dropbox folder and pull up a file, listen to it, and have a reference so you know what it is you're trying to achieve.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's one of the reasons why when I was buying a microphone after when I made my first microphone upgrade, I said, I want one microphone that I can have in the studio or at home, because at that point I was traveling a lot.
Mm,
And I didn't want to have to worry about trying to match. And so I thought, at least if
yeah.
I'm recording with the same microphone, maybe it's not always the exact identical space, but at least if it's the same microphone, it matches a little bit. And then I've picked up,
Yeah.
I know it is in my notes in my Hilton Honors now to request a room that is removed from the elevator, for example.
Oh yeah, the elevator.
But
Yeah, yeah.
we travel to visit my wife's family. Often they live about 8 hours away, and the hotel that I stay at is right beside the fire station. And all the Adobe, noise canceling or whatever is not going to remove when I'm mid recording and all of a sudden a fire truck pulls out or whatever. So there's always going to be those little things along the way. You said something earlier, and I want
that's changing, by the way.
it will be able to remove the fire trucks, because it's a pain in the butt.
Well, Isotope, again, I think they're kind of a wait and see, or maybe they're behind the curve. They haven't been so heavy on the AI noise reduction yet, but there are AI noise reduction tools that are supernatural in their ability to remove random sound, because what they do is they listen to the audio, analyze the audio using thousands and thousands of voice models
Right.
through machine learning, and they go, well, human voices sound like, on average, something like this.
Yep. Yep.
Then it listens to your voice and say, oh, well, your voice sounds like this. Okay, we get that. Now we've made a model of your voice. Well, what's everything else? Noise. So what it's able to do is subtract your voice,
Yeah.
or really subtract everything except your voice from the recording, including birds, dogs, animals, vehicles, trucks, impact noises, like all sorts of crazy.
So your neighbor's wood chipper is not going to be a problem anymore. They're out there with their chainsaw in the middle of your Source Connect session, and
it does depend on the signal to noise, right? So
right.
if the noise is like approaching the volume of your voice, not going to happen.
Then you're in trouble.
Then you're in trouble. But if the noise is maybe, I don't know, 30 decibels or less than your voice, you have a much better chance of these tools being able to clean that up. And it's, again, the worse the noise problem, the harder the tool has to work, the least likely the results are going to be great. But you will be shocked how some of these things, one of them is Waves Clarity VX plugin, and there's many coming on the horizon already that have this ability to do this through machine learning. And so they can, I don't tell people to use these tools as a everyday plugin, drop it into a preset. I tell them to have a tool like this when you just got to pull out the big guns. They're like, well, I got to pull out the clarity because dang it, that was a great take. Yeah. There's a random sound. It's right on the syllable. I can't remove it manually. Then you can process with clarity. And it's a weird tool. It actually doesn't always do the same thing twice, which is what makes it such a weird one to use.
Right.
But when it works, it's like magic, and you can deal with those really bad noises.
So let's talk about, you mentioned earlier about the car.
Oh yeah.
We're setting up these pillow forts, and we're, when I see guys that are like flipping up the couch and trying to stand inside of the couch and stuff, I'm like, that just feels like a lot of work to me.
Or mattresses.
Right.
You flip the mattresses.
Something that I think we never think about as a recording space is the car. But it seems to me that they're engineered to try to keep at least a level of noise out. Is that an alternative if you needed to? Could you go, if your car's in a quiet space or you drove it to a quiet space, is it a place where you could record and get a clean sound?
I mean, I have a client whose name I don't recall, but he actually would choose to record in his car over the home studio because the home studio was not the quietest environment when the family was home.
Sure.
And this was during the pandemic.
Okay.
Necessity is the mother of invention. So he would have to do Source Connect sessions, which require quiet on demand.
Yep.
And so he would actually run a long mic cable and a long headphone extension out the garage door or out through the house into the garage. He would go in the car, set up in the car, and do the session from inside the car because he was able to get the sound of the car sounding just as good as his booth, and the noise was lower. So yeah, cars are, especially quality cars, of course, luxury cars, are designed to reduce noise. I mean, that's part of what you're paying for. They have a
Yep.
tremendous amount of it's called Dynamat. It's like all this heavy rubber deadening inside the body panels. It's got all sorts of stuff, heavier glass, all kinds of things to try to keep the quiet inside the car. And so they do a pretty darn good job. Are you going to pull it off on the shoulder of a freeway? Heck no. But off an exit, down a side road, if there's no fire truck going by,
Yep.
probably you can pull off a pretty good sounding recording. So yeah, cars are designed to be quiet, and they're designed to be also nowadays acoustically tuned for sound, for music and their sound systems. Again, as the luxury cars are going to have a lot more attention to this, but really, I mean, it's amazing how good a car can sound. Now, I've had clients get away with sitting in the front seat, right at the steering wheel.
Yep.
Sometimes that can work. I mean, if you can get your hands on some pillows and throw them up on the dashboard, cover the glass, all the better. I just feel like you're going to get better results sitting in the back seat and have the mic like between the headrests. So now the glass is all about as far away from the microphone as you can get it. And you're going to have less issues, I think, with reflections and stuff like that when you're more in the back seat. But it just depends on the car and the situation.
It's one of those things that I've actually had to do it before. I've actually had to pull off and, when I'm traveling for vacation and record an urgent audition, and I recorded it in the back seat of the car and, stuffed some pillows around. And I was actually quite surprised. Client had no idea that was where I recorded.
That's the best.
Got to the hotel that night, had booked the job. So then, go through the process again. Never occurred to me, just go back out in the car and record the dumb thing. So of course, at that point I'm like trying to build the pillow fort and everything.
Right.
But
wait a minute. So you auditioned from the car and booked the gig, and the gig was the same day?
Yeah, booked it. Cow. Like a couple hours later, I got checked into the hotel and had an email to record it. And so because I'm not smart enough to just go back and record in the car where I started, and I'm trying to. I got this picture.
Counterintuitive, but yeah, that probably would have been better.
I got this picture of my wife. There was like a giant piece of furniture, like that the TV's on, and it's got the drawers in it, and the fridge is built into it, like this 1,000-pound piece of furniture that we could not move. And my wife, thankfully, is very, very small. And so I've got this amazing picture of her like crammed behind it, trying to unplug the refrigerator so that we could make the room quiet. And now I'm sitting here listening to you talking, and a couple years later, I'm like, you bonehead, why didn't you just go back and record the thing in the car? So
yeah.
We talked microphones, and you gave some good suggestions about microphones. What about interfaces? Because, I'm guessing if you don't want to take your U87 or your 103 or whatever fancy microphone you've got, chances are you don't necessarily want to pack up your Apollo and put it in your carry-on suitcase or whatever either. So are there some budget-friendly interfaces that are relatively small, portable, that you say this would be a good one for you?
So the best portable interfaces sometimes are not always the budget friendliest because they're more pro quality.
Sure.
And there's a brand that always comes to mind when I think of that, which is called Centrance.
Okay.
Right? Centrance is really most famous for the MicPort Pro. This is the audio interface that came out with 12, 14 years ago that I was a big proponent of. It just looks like an aluminum cigarette tube. It's just like this long, has a few knobs on the top and a button on the end, and that's it. Real simple. And these things worked really, really well for recording on the road because they were super compact, very lightweight, and still maintained very good sound quality. They used good parts. That product has evolved, and now they're up to the MicPort Pro 3. It's added more bells and whistles as things tend to go, so it's gotten more expensive. It's in the $300 ballpark. But it has the right sets of tools. It's got an extremely good preamp, a really good headphone monitor control mix knob that lets you blend yourself with your director or the client. So it makes it easier to set up your headphone monitor. It has a high pass filter switch. So if the microphone you're using is still too low frequency sensitive, you're still getting some of that rumble from the freeway or the airport.
Okay. Yep.
You can gauge this little HPF, and now the mic will not be as sensitive at the low end of the mic sound spectrum, right? So that cleans up the waveform right there.
Okay.
It also has a limiter. Now, this is a weird name for it because it's not really a limiter. It's really just a compressor. But what it's going to do is it's when you're doing a live session, it decreases the chances you're going to clip and create distortion.
Okay.
So if you're doing animated stuff where your energy level is kind of all over the place,
Sure.
having something like this is really, really nice to have. That's built in. There are very few products in this category, certainly even in the portable category, that have those features, which makes it really stand apart. If you're on a more budget side, Shure came out with a new one. They used to have the X2U. And
That's what I used to use. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if they produce it anymore because they've now replaced it with a new model. But the X2U was a really great budget-friendly version. It was reasonably good. It can only record 16-bit wave, which these days I recommend 24-bit. But still, if you're just trying to pull off a record on the road or you want to have a light travel kit, this was another nice alternative. Again, a much better price point. Now, Shure has the MVX2U.
Okay.
So they've just taken the idea of that product. I'm looking at it just to make sure I'm giving you right information, but it's just another idea on the same thing. Plug it into your mic, plug your headphones and a USB cable in, and you've basically converted any microphone you have into a high quality USB microphone. So you got preamp, you can get monitor mix, and other bells and whistles too. That whole bells and whistles issue to me is a bit of a problem. There's so much gear now that relies on software, control panels, and firmware to set up settings, dial them in, get them working, which for the engineer geeks is great. We love tweaking and messing around with controls. For the actual performer, that stuff's not very performer friendly because when you take away physical knobs and buttons, yeah, that may seem to simplify it because there's nothing on the unit. But when you do need to make an adjustment rapidly, mid-session, make a change to something, it's much more difficult when it's relegated to a control panel somewhere else on the in a software application, right? So it's just this double-edged sword. We're progressing towards digital everything, but I miss the physical knobs and controls of gear. At the really budget end, PreSonus does make one. I think it's called the Audio Box Go.
Okay.
I think it's well under 100. It's like $80. It's really inexpensive, and it's really compact. And it's really lightweight. It's really chintzy made plastic. I don't know how long one will last.
Yeah, I was going to say how many travel trips through the airport security will it survive?
Yeah, I don't know, but at $79, maybe you buy two of them. I don't know, but that's a really lightweight, inexpensive, portable interface that still gives you actual controls. It's got a gain knob. It's got a headphone monitor level mix knob. It's got the basic pieces you need to record in a portable format, so that's another option for you to keep the prices under control.
You bring up another interesting point, talking about how, some of these things, they're taking away the knobs and putting it into digital and giving you bells and whistles, which bells and whistles are nice. But strictly speaking, as a voice actor who's recording, how much of these bells and whistles do we need / want anyway? Because anything that you do on the signal going in, it becomes harder to alter after, right? So should we really even be playing around with some of this stuff anyway? Or is it something where we have you set it up for us once and then, don't touch this again?
Yeah, well, I mean, the king of the audio interface of bells and whistles is this one.
Yes, the Apollo. Yes, it has all the bells and all the whistles.
It's got all the bells, and they add new ones all the time.
Yeah.
And then they say, but download the new plugins that we have, right? So this is the ultimate in overkill functionality, layers of function that are far beyond what most people would ever need, difficulty and confusion of setting up basic things that should be easy, like loop backs and just a handful. It has if I could dumb this thing down, and I don't mean to say that you guys are dumb, but we know that there are things that are just unnecessarily complicated because they were not designed for performers. They were designed for engineers. They're designed for home engineer, music songwriter, people that have hours and days to tinker and twiddle. Stuff for pros means you pull it out, it's set correctly or has the right features that you need at your fingertips immediately. That's, to me, what a professional product is for a performer. It has a high pass filter. that's great. A lot of gear doesn't. So I feel like anything with a high pass filter is an advantage for most people because that is always our problem. Too
Right.
much low end rumble and stuff.
Okay.
But what you're getting in the Apollo ecosystem is a huge, never ending upgraded list of virtual processors,
Yes.
actual models of hardware, boxes that are legendary pieces of equipment from studio lore starting back to the 50s that can be inserted into the signal chain. And if you are a producer type and you love gadgets, this thing is the
Right.
best. It's just incredibly, it's just incredible. The sound, the flexibility you can get out of it is amazing. But that comes with responsibility.
Yeah.
Again, learning curve, more to think about when you're traveling, more stuff to carry. This is, I would say it's a portable-ish thing, but it's still pretty bulky and heavy. You absolutely have to bring a power supply that plugs into this. So you got to have that with you.
I think it's the price point is part of it too for, not everybody wants to stick that in their suitcase. With airlines are not the most reliable sometimes when it comes to getting your luggage to your final destination, right? So
yeah, the absolute minimum price point to start with one of these product lines is at least $600.
Yeah.
Right. So so who is it for? I would say it's for people that do have a very established sound. They use one at home already. They do a lot of promo and television work where their sound they just have a brand in their sound. It's got, I use the API Vision channel strip and I use the Manly Vox box, blah, blah, blah.
Yep.
And that's kind of baked into your sound. Then it makes more sense to have something like this because then you can literally, just like taking the same mic along the road on the road is going to give you the same basic sound. You get the same processing. But yeah, once you get married, locked in essentially to having those plugins, you are locked into having those plugins. You have to have those to continue to get that sound.
Yep.
Not, you don't have to. It's a lot easier if you already do. I do match sound for people like, oh, this is what I use at home, but I'm going to have this on the road. I'll do my best to match the tone with other plugins. But it's definitely much more difficult once you get locked in to a certain set of tools that are hardware based. You have to bring that thing with you.
Yeah, I feel like more buttons for me just means more things to screw up.
Well, I also don't like products where one knob does many jobs, right?
Yeah.
The whole thing with you've got this knob here, but it depends on whether you press this one,
what's selected,
this one, and if you press this one twice, then it does something else. Press this one twice, it does something else.
Yep.
When this button's pressed, this row of buttons changes from one set of functions to another set of functions.
You're causing me stress just listening to you talk about it.
Yeah, this is also a button.
Oh my gosh.
It's like, so it can be frustrating once you learn how to use it and you get around it. It's fine, but it can be really frustrating to make quick changes on the fly. You can't do it. First of all, you can't just reach over and do it. You have to stop, look at the unit, press buttons, look at the screen, and see what it's doing. Whereas a thing with just knobs on it, you can do it by feel. You just reach over and feel it's this knob and turn it. Right. That's, again, in the heat of a session, a Source Connect session, a big client thing, and they're like, knock your gain down, please. Or they play back, the return level is really hot in your headphones and you're just cringing. You just reach over and tweak a knob real quick. That kind of adjustability on the fly is what you're going to really appreciate. And that's why I'm not a big fan of these for everybody. The Apollo stuff is just scary sometimes.
This brings up another interesting point, and this isn't specifically related to travel, but I want to get your take on this because it's something that comes up all the time, and somebody just recently came to me with it again. We're talking about, you've got all these bells and whistles, and what bells and whistles do you apply? How do you apply them properly? Do you apply them on the signal going in, or do you apply them in post, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? Let's talk specifically about auditions.
Mm-hmm.
How much cleanup should we do? What is your definition of raw audio? Let's start with that, because I think everybody has a different definition of raw audio. But how much cleanup should we be doing on our auditions? And I'll use the word cleanup, assuming that is it EQ? Is it compression? Is it processing, blah, 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 blah? Or is it just taking out mouth clits, et cetera? What's your take on that?
Well, I think at the very bare minimum is to take out the rumble, right? So again, I go back to the high pass filter.
Right.
Having some tool to preemptively remove just stuff that's just pure garbage
Right.
that absolutely provides no service to anybody. Just having preemptively removed that before you send out the file is one very basic thing that you can do to a raw file. And the other thing you can do to a raw file is just correct the levels. It's difficult to record consistent level every time. It's very hard to set your gain correctly so that your performance level and your gain setting is consistent so that the files you send out are at the right levels all the time. That's a lot to think about as an actor, because you're not I'm telling you, if you're looking at your script and you're looking at a VU meter on the side of the screen, you can't be doing that.
And if you're trying to listen to it in your headphones, now you're focusing on your voice, and
it is way too much. You're definitely not in the role at that moment. You're doing too many things. So record with a lower level. It's okay. We used to say you really need peaks between -6 and -3. That's kind of the old days. Now with 24-bit recording, the system captures a tremendous dynamic range. You can actually record with much lower level, peaking at -12 even, and it's perfectly fine because we can normalize the audio later. So to me, the two basic things I would probably do is high pass filter out the rumbly stuff and normalize the audio so that each file you send out is consistent and level. It just makes their life a little bit easier. Don't normalize to 0. You don't want your files to have peaks right at 0. I do normally -3 as my peak, so I'm not close to getting to 0. -6, whatever it is, just do it. Just be consistently doing it all the time. And that way, every time the client gets that file from you, they know those things are being done. If it's an audition, raw can take other forms. You can take it a little. It's one of those things. If you know what you're doing,
just give me a definition of conversational, right? You get 100 definitions. Give me a definition of raw, right? Everybody's got a different take of what raw is.
Raw might mean that you also apply a little room tone noise control to drop the room tone a little bit. So if it's normally -55, you make it -65 with some very tasteful processing, right? That would still be basically raw because they're going to take your file. They're still going to have complete control over EQ, compression, limiting, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
Well, I'll tell you what, it's definitely not raw is if you're compressing and limiting the file. In other words, you're messing with the dynamic range.
Okay.
Because that stuff can't be fixed in post. It's very hard to correct for it. Once it's been compressed dynamically, the damage is done. Very hard to undo that. So you definitely don't want to go there. EQ is sometimes also part of my raw audio because I might be using an EQ that's what I call a corrective EQ. So if someone's home studio, their booth is not perfectly tuned acoustically, so I hear a little bit of a ring at 180 hertz. There's little things that I smooth out with EQ.
Okay.
That might be part of that raw sound. So what you're doing is you're sending them audio with, again, tastefully, carefully controlled EQ that smooths out some of those anomalies.
Yep.
So the file they get from you is as clear and clean and uncolored as possible. And then that gives them the ability to now very easily adjust and clean up in post. So
however they decide to ruin it after that, that's their problem, right?
So a raw file could theoretically have 3 or 4 different processing levels applied to it and still, in my opinion, be considered raw. Someone else I know said it's like pre-washing the dish before it goes in the dishwasher a little bit.
Yeah.
I think that was Amanda Rose Smith said that once, but it's be careful. If you absolutely don't know what you're doing and they say send it raw, just send it raw, you know? But someone like myself, I can listen to your audio. I can do what's called a sound check. You can send me your audio raw and with your processing now, both. Just send me both versions and I'll tell you like how off base you are, or maybe you nailed it. I'll tell you what it is that you're doing so you can take the guesswork out.
Right on. Well, we've touched on the idea of travel through the airport a couple of times now. Do you have a preference on carry-on versus checked bag when we're bringing our gear with us?
Man, it seems like checked baggage is just becoming kind of on average worse than better in terms of how they handle bags.
How
And
many Apple AirTags do you need to have in your suitcase before you send your gear that way?
I have had good luck with bags lost. I've never had one lost, but I've certainly
Yep.
had more bags broken in the last few years
Yep.
than I did before. Now, when I go buy a bag at Ross, I get the ugliest, weirdest looking bag because I want it to stand out, and I know
Yep.
it's going to be broken in the next year or two.
Yep.
So, I would, at the very least, I would carry on my mic. When you put it on the belt, if you're not TSA pre, when you pull out your laptop, pull out the mic and put it on the belt next to the computer so they
Right.
can see what that is.
See what it is. Yep.
The bigger the airport, the less of a problem. The smaller the city, the smaller the airport, the less likely they've seen your shotgun mic.
Right. Yes.
Don't tell them you have a shotgun mic. Tell them you have a microphone in here. Put it in the tray.
Don't pack it inside a PVC pipe and make it look like a
Oh my
pipe
God.
bomb.
Rode had a beautiful machined aluminum tube for their mic that
Yep.
threaded on. It was gorgeous, but man, did that thing look like a pipe bomb.
When I got my 416,
Oh
that was one of the
God.
very first things I did was I went out and bought PVC pipe, and then I got the round insulation that you can stick inside of it. So then the mic just fit in there perfectly. Now I used that when I was just driving places or whatever. I never tried to take it through the airport, but that was like, because I'm like, oh my gosh, they're going to see this. They're going to think it's a pipe bomb, and I'm going to end up with a full body cavity search or something. So
I know my buddy Bo Weaver told me years ago, he would bring his 416 in the original box with the actual little paper user manual with the mic saying, this is what this is.
Thing. And yeah.
It's way less of an issue now than it was 10 to 15 years ago. Right. Because the TSA has been trained over those many, many years to learn what these things are. I'm always amazed. I just traveled last week and I had my Pelican 1510 rollerboard hard shell case just packed to the hilt with lights, mics, cables, all just a big giant mess. Right.
Yep.
And I watched that guy I watched him look at it, and he passed it through in about 5 seconds. And I was like, that's amazing. That guy's seen a lot.
Yeah, for sure.
But you want to take things out that would be flagged immediately, and considered possibly threatening. But, all the other stuff that's not as critical, probably the audio interface can go in your suitcase, certainly cables and other accoutrement that you might want to have with you, a light or things like that. But I still think it's pretty smart to bring your microphone on the plane with you.
Particularly if you are, you got your 416 or something like that, right? You got some money wrapped up there.
It is a pipe bomb adjacent.
Yes.
Or it's called a shotgun mic.
Yes.
Just try to refrain from the shotgun description.
Yeah, find a different word. So I'm really looking forward to having my Tri booth here soon. It's ordered. Cool. It's coming. I'm excited to have it.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
We spend a lot of time visiting my mother-in-law. Like I said, 5 or 6 weeks a year. Sometimes we're up there, and I'm recording in hotels, and I'm just tired of building the pillow forts.
Is this the infomercial segment?
This is the infomercial segment. So I'm excited about the Tri booth, but tell us about it, because I think this is something that's really cool. And, if you don't want to rearrange the furniture and stand up the couch and box yourself in with the mattress or whatever, it feels like this is just a much more convenient fix. So talk to us a little bit about the Tri booth.
So who's the Tri booth for, first of all? The Tri booth is for someone that is a pro. They record a lot. Their sound quality is part of their brand. It's just they've established a great sound. Their clients are accustomed to it. They have a booth at home they work from, and they want to take that sound with them. The Tri booth, I think, is arguably the best product to do this. Mm-hmm. So what it is, it's a folding, travelable booth. Now I feel, and Rick Wasserman, who's the owner of Tri booth and my client and the one who developed the product, I feel like it's the Goldilocks between the smaller portable booths that are out there, and we know them all, and the totally non-travelable booth like a Whisper Room or anything, right? This is like the middle ground between them. So it's hopefully just right. Now, in terms of travelability, to get the results that we were looking for and still be checkable as a bag, we had to keep the weight under a certain amount.
Right.
Let's assume it's going to go in a checkable suitcase. Well, those are usually 7 or 8 pounds.
Mhm.
So that means the booth itself has to be under 42 pounds, right?
Yep.
Blankets and all.
Yep.
So that was our weight restriction. So we had to, everything we did when we designed this booth was to make it checkable as a normal suitcase, right? So that was our major design restriction. That was one.
Yep.
Two, still get really good sound out of something portable, obviously paramount. So that took some experimenting to how much material do we need? How many
Yep.
layers? Where do we put it? Do we need it to go all the way to the floor, or can we have it be off the floor a little bit? That's something that people ask about. How can it be soundproof if it doesn't go up down to the floor?
Right.
It ain't soundproof, kids. It's a portable 40-pound thing. It ain't going to be soundproof.
Yep.
Does it reduce some room tone noise? It does. I've had people tell me that when they set it up, it reduced certain aspects of the room tone to a point where it was more acceptable, which I'm like, wow, that's awesome. We don't intend it to be soundproof, and it physically can't be when a 600 to 800 pound booth is what you're looking at for soundproofing, right? So, but the other thing was to make it something that an actor can deploy and use without having a freaking panic attack.
George, is it easier to build than IKEA furniture?
Oh my God, yes.
That's really the main thing here. That's what it comes down to. Can I build this easier than I could build something from IKEA?
I've seen the competitors online that sell them much less expensively on Amazon. I know they're out there.
Yep.
I've seen the other ones out there, and they all say, hyperbole like assembles in minutes. And then you see it's just a pile of plastic tubing or aluminum, and you have to put it all together, right? So when we first built it, that's what it was. It was a pile of tubes that you had to fit together,
right?
Like Lincoln Logs, and we knew how to do it. But we realized, oh my gosh, you give this to an actor. I'm going to use my quintessential. I love her so much. Just went to her wedding. She knows who she is, and so she won't mind if I say this. My archetypal actor is Lori Allen.
Okay.
If Lori Allen can pull this out of the case, assemble it under the duress of travel and the stress of a client session coming, and use it, which she did, I know it's the right product.
This is the measuring stick for success here, and we've achieved it.
And I love Lori so much. She is an actor's actor, right? Very right brain. This is who this thing was designed for. So I'm not going to say it assembles itself, but the thing is we've bungeed together, interconnected many of the parts, as many as we could, so that when you pull the thing out, they're already connected to each other.
Right.
And that was the huge revelation. It's like a tent, where the poles have it's elastic. The pieces are pre-elastic together, which tremendously makes it easier because you pull it. It really ends up being 5 assemblies: the top piece, the bottom piece, and the 3 legs.
How many Legos did you have when you were a kid?
Yeah. How much aptitude do you have for this stuff? Again, people that are not technical, people that don't like building IKEA furniture, this is still something that they can deploy and use with a pretty minimal amount of frustration.
Right.
That was a very important part of the design of this product, right?
Yep.
So good sound, light enough to travel as a regular suitcase, easy to assemble when you're there. But another side effect of it is just great ergonomics. Mm-hmm. Every temp booth we talked about, travel situation, requires you to contort your body into some shape that's other than being standing up at your natural position at a microphone with the script at the right height, the mic at the right spot. And this allows you to do all those things. It's just very well thought out so that it feels like you're in your studio at home.
Right.
Would you drag this thing along for a one night overnighter? I don't think so. Probably not. Would you drag it along for a 1 week on the road? Yeah, I would say for sure.
Yep.
Joe Cipriano famously took his to Europe, took it to multiple locations. His clients never knew any different as he traveled. And many others, David.
That's a pretty good endorsement right there, right? If it's good enough for Joe.
David Kay, another guy.
Yep.
We've got a lot of, in our business, famous A-lister voice actors who use this thing because it was designed by another one of them, Rick Wasserman. he is a pro working voice actor, has been for 18 years, and I've known him about that long. And he designed it for himself.
Right.
That's the bottom line. And he is a perfectionist when it comes to detail and production quality. It's super important to him. And he found out other people felt the same way, and that's how it ended up becoming a product. And now we're going to sell 400 units maybe by the end of the year.
That's amazing.
Pretty incredible, right?
Yep.
Still hand built by he and his wife.
Wow.
In Ashland, Oregon, where they live. And I went and visited them a couple weeks ago. Beautiful place, working out of the garage, making them in batches of 10.
That's amazing.
You can't, I mean, it's amazing.
Yep.
It's just because we haven't found anybody that can make some of the parts well.
Yep.
Every time we would try to have somebody else sew this or make that, Rick's like, no, man, it doesn't look right. They didn't do it right. Yeah, it might work, but it doesn't look quality the way we would do it. And so it is artisanal as it gets.
Huge respect for that level of detail. Yeah, that's amazing.
That's the
well, and I mean, for the moment anyway, I guess the nice thing is that it's not something that you need to, crank out 100,000 of these things a year, right? So you have the ability to have that level of detail to it. So that's awesome. I'm really excited about getting mine because I can't tell you how many times. Well, nowadays, heck, you go into a hotel room, half the time they don't even have an ironing board, or they don't keep extra blankets in the rooms now, and you're trying to track down all this stuff. I was like, this is just a pain in the butt. Yeah. And I hate going through this every single time. So yeah, I'm looking forward to having a solution that ties all of that together.
And the fifth leg of the stool is the service.
Yeah.
Rick's customer service is not like anybody. He is happy to talk to people, answer questions, great customer service. And when every single booth you buy comes really with me, because I will either build for you a filter, which is like we're talking about, making a tuning setup that will try to emulate the sound you do at home.
Right.
Or if you opt not to, we can just do a 30-minute one-on-one consult and just talk over the setup, make sure you did it right, answer all your questions, up to you. But that's part of the purchase of every single booth. So that's another thing that's going to set it apart from the rest. So I hope you enjoy yours. And at some point, we'll either be talking or you'll be hearing your audio, and I'll be making a filter for you.
That's awesome. So let's wrap up with you offer a lot of different services to voice actors as George the Tech, helping people design booths, build booths, soundproofing equipment, stacks, all that sort of stuff. Give us kind of a run through of some of the different services that are available. And if somebody wants to get in touch with you, how do we do it?
Yeah, we do. The most cost-effective, high-value thing you can possibly do on our site is get a sound check. So if you're on the site for the very first time and you want sort of more of a white glove feeling, click the first timer button at the top, and that will take you to an information form. Fill that out, give us as much information as you can, and Rich Green, who's an awesome guy on our team, will look at what your needs are, evaluate what you're doing, and if it's really simple, he'll probably help you out himself. And if it's something more specific, he'll say, oh, this is what you actually need, and send you the information, give you the service links that you need to go to the next step. So that right away is like something that I'm really proud of that we can do now. We also have, like you said, it's soups and nuts. It is just basic sound checking, listening to your file, studio design services from start to finish. It's setting up processing. It's training. We have a library of webinar and module content. Webinars are going to be an hour to 2. They've usually been done live. We schedule them throughout the year, and then we put them up on the library that you can do what do you call it? Video on demand, right? You can buy and watch the video as much as you want. And we also have a bunch of modules that are going on there. Those are usually shorter, smaller topics, but I'm filling up that library with a lot of really useful information. We have 7 videos now that are on the site that are really just the 7 fundamental things voice actors need to learn just to get started with a home studio.
Right on.
So we have all that going on, but that's not all.
But wait, there's more.
I'm on a website that's about marketing. I would be insane not to have an offer for you guys. So by the time this airs, we will have a landing page at georgethe.tech/ /MS.
Okay.
If you go to /MS, we will have a coupon code for you for some specials to give you a deal on your services. So just use /MS.
That's awesome.
It's not built yet. Last minute I was like, oh crap, I need to have it.
You'll have time.
But it's not live. It's not live, so I can do it later. But that will be up on the site, and there'll be some coupons. And I usually will feature a few specific services that are great for you guys that will be helpful to you. So we have that for you as well as an offer.
That's awesome. Well, thank you very much for that. I appreciate that. And I know some people will definitely take advantage of it. Well, George, this has been amazing. And I think that the only thing left to do now is to tell people that while you are traveling this holiday season, building all of your various and assorted pillow forts and flipping up your couches and mattresses, you gotta post it on Instagram and tag George and I so that we can see what you're up to and see how you've applied the things that you've learned in this episode to help you build an even better pillow fort. Or, maybe everybody's going to go out and ask Santa for a try booth for Christmas, and that'd be amazing too.
Yeah, please put @GeorgeTheTech. I'm @GeorgeTheTech on all the platforms.
Right on.
And, definitely tag me so I can see what you're doing. That would be great. Definitely tag us both.
That's awesome. All right, George. Well, thank you so much for your time and for all the wisdom that you've shared and for the recommendations as well. We'll include some of that stuff in the show notes so people can come back and reference that very easily. Some of the equipment, the microphones, interfaces, etc. This has all been really helpful. Thank you so much for that. I really do appreciate it.
Absolutely. It's been a real pleasure. Thanks, Mark.